Where to start with what we just witnessed in NASCAR this weekend? You ever watch a race and just feel that tension building lap after lap, like something big is about to go wrong? Yeah, that kind of feeling hit hard, and when it did, it changed everything. And the crazy part is this is not just about one moment. It actually led to two major stories coming out of the same situation. Both of them raising serious questions about what we are seeing on these superspeedways right now. Because what happened out there, it was not just chaotic. It might say a lot about where this sport is heading, how drivers are racing each other, and whether things are starting to get a little too out of control in the pack. Stick with me because we are going to break down both sides of this. And trust me, the second part adds a whole different layer to what already feels like a huge moment for NASCAR this season. And hey, real quick, if you are a true NASCAR fan like me, hit that like button and consider subscribing. This channel is just getting started. We are chasing that first 15,000 subs, and it is all about real talk from fans who live this sport every single week. Alright, so let us get into what actually went down, because this was one of those moments that reminds you just how brutal superspeedway racing can be. We are talking about Talladega. Tight pack, everybody locked together, pushing hard inches apart, and then boom, the kind of wreck every driver fears, a massive 26-car big one that wiped out a huge portion of the field in seconds. At the center of it all was Bubba Wallace, running near the front, right in the thick of that lead pack. And if you have watched enough Talladega races, you already know when you are up there, you are basically one push away from everything going right or everything going completely wrong. And that is exactly what happened. The contact came from behind, and in that kind of racing, it does not take much. One slight misalignment, one mistimed push, and the whole line stacks up. Wallace gets turned, and suddenly the track is blocked with spinning cars, smoke everywhere, and no way out for half the field. Now, here is where it gets interesting, because even though this looked like chaos, people inside NASCAR are not just brushing it off as that is Talladega. Kevin Harvick, former Cup Series champion and now analyst, made it very clear. Yes, the margin for error is basically zero, but decision-making still matters, he said. When you are pushing that hard in a pack, everything has to be perfect. One bad judgment from anyone in that line can take out half the field. And honestly, he is right, because this was not just bad luck. This was a combination of aggression, timing, and the way this package forces drivers to race. We also have to talk about RFK Racing, because they got absolutely crushed in this wreck. Multiple entries taken out, and their entire race was basically over in an instant. That is the kind of hit that does not just ruin a Sunday. It can mess with momentum in the standings too. And that is the bigger issue here. Drivers came out of this race frustrated, not just about the wreck, but about the style of racing itself. These tight packs, constant pushing, and zero breathing room are exciting. But they are also creating situations where drivers feel like they do not even have full control anymore. And a lot of that conversation is pointing back to the next-gen car. Because with this car, superspeedway racing has become so momentum-based that drivers are almost forced into risky moves. You lift, you lose the line. You do not push, you get passed. So everyone keeps pushing harder until something breaks, and this time it really broke. Now, let us move into the second part of this, because this is where things get even more real. After the race, Bubba Wallace spoke out. And instead of pointing fingers at someone else, he actually took responsibility. He said they need to figure out how to be pushed better. That the car was a little unstable when getting pushed manageable, but maybe that last hit was just too much. Think about that for a second. He is the race leader, gets hit from behind, which is completely normal at Talladega, gets turned, collects half the field, and still says he takes responsibility. That says a lot. Now, the driver behind him at that moment was Ross Chastain. He gave Wallace a strong bump down the backstretch, and that triggered the whole chain reaction. Wallace went sideways into the outside safer barrier, right in front of Cole Custer. And from there it turned into what many described as a smoke screen of carnage going into turn 3. And the list of drivers caught up in this is brutal. Connor Zilisch, Daniel Suarez, William Byron, Carson Hocevar, Eric Jones, Ryan Blaney, and Kyle Larson were all involved in this one wreck. Those are not just random names. Those are contenders, big teams, and serious playoff implications. For Wallace, it ended in a DNF, another frustrating result at a track where he usually shows speed and confidence. He even said it himself. They came into Talladega expecting something and walked away with nothing to show for it. Now, they have to regroup, figure out what went wrong, and move on to Texas. But here is the thing. This whole situation is not just about one wreck or one driver or one bad push. It is about a pattern we are starting to see. These superspeedway races are producing incredible moments, but also massive crashes that are becoming almost expected. And when drivers themselves are saying they feel limited in control, that is when you know this conversation is not going away anytime soon. So, now the big question is, does NASCAR look at this and say that is just racing, or do they start thinking about changes? Because if this keeps happening, it is not just about entertainment anymore. It is about risk consistency and what kind of racing we really want to see. And as fans, that is something we are all going to be watching very closely. Honestly, I love the intensity of Talladega. I love the unpredictability. But seeing this many big names taken out in one moment like that, it hits different. Horn music, and if I am being real with you as a fan who watches every single week, this whole situation feels like it is starting to cross a line. Because yes, superspeedway racing has always been wild. The big one is part of the deal. But lately, it feels less like drivers making moves and more like drivers just hanging on hoping the guy behind them does not mess up. That is not the same thing. When you hear guys like Kevin Harvick talking about how there is basically zero margin for error, that tells you everything. And when drivers themselves are coming out frustrated, not just about the wreck, but about the style of racing, that is a bigger red flag. And then you look at Bubba Wallace taking responsibility, and that part honestly earns a lot of respect. Not every driver does that, especially after getting hit from behind. But at the same time, it also shows how complicated this is because even he knows it is not just one driver's fault. It is the system they are racing in. The next-gen car on superspeedways is creating this environment where everyone is forced to push constantly. There is no room to breathe, no room to reset, and no real control once the chain reaction starts. That is why we keep seeing these massive wrecks. So, for me, this is where I land on it. I do not want NASCAR to lose what makes Talladega special because the intensity is what makes it must-watch racing. But I also do not think we can just keep saying that is racing when half the field gets wiped out again and again. At some point, you have to ask if the balance is off. Right now, it feels like we are leaning too far into chaos and not enough into driver control. And if that does not change, we are going to keep having this same conversation after every big race like this. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think this is just part of superspeedway racing, or is it getting too aggressive with this current package? Drop your thoughts in the comments, let us talk about it. And if you enjoyed this kind of real, no-filter NASCAR discussion, go ahead and like the video and subscribe to NASCAR Turbo Report. Like I said earlier, we are building something here, chasing that first 15,000 subscribers, just real fans talking real racing every single week. Trust me, if this is how things are heating up right now, you do not want to miss what is coming next, because this season is just getting started, and it already feels like anything can happen.